Hello, my name is Rachel, and in this video I'm going to go over my thoughts and review the Lomi Home Composter by Pila after using it for the past few months. And before I begin, if you're interested in checking out their website, maybe even buying one at any point during this video, I've included a link for you down in the description below to make it super simple for you. You can go ahead and click that at any point if you have an interest. So let's start by going over what this machine does. And like any other composter, it's a place to put your food waste into, whether it's banana peels to leftover bits of cereal that your kid didn't eat. And this is really beneficial to the environment since food loss and food waste contributes about 6 to 8% of the human-made greenhouse gas footprint. And this is simply because food waste, it adds CO2 and methane gas to the atmosphere while it is sitting in a landfill when you do choose to put it into a garbage can. And by composting your food waste, it keeps it from going and sitting in a landfill and from creating those greenhouse gases. But unlike most composters that just have your food sit and slowly decompose in a pile or maybe even a bin, the Lomi turns your food waste into this dried organic matter within a few hours, and it can easily be added right away to soil in your garden, into planter pots that your houseplants are in, etc., wherever you are needing it. Whereas your conventional composter or green bin can take anywhere from a few months to a few years, really, depending on the size of your compost pile, to create soil that's usable in a garden or elsewhere. So for those of you who may live in smaller spaces, like an apartment, or you're renting, the Lomi is honestly a really great option when compared to the conventional composters and all of the room that it can take up. So starting with the setup, it was really easy and straightforward. Even my boys were able to help, as you can see here, and the instruction manual was clear. Once you've put in the activated carbon into the 2 filter bins, it's really just ready to go right from there. And they even make the bag that the Lomi comes in compostable, which I thought was a really nice touch. Although, as a word of warning, be sure to cut it up and maybe use small bits within like a few cycles rather than trying to do it all in one go. And yes, I am speaking from personal experience because I tried to do it all in one go with a few other things that I had tossed in there, and it left me with these really large chunks that I had to run through multiple cycles just to fully get that plastic down to a manageable size that had really composted well. So if you do choose to compost that bag, now you know. And once it's set up, you can start adding food waste right away. And this includes anything from fruit and vegetable scraps, meat scraps, coffee filters, starches like pasta and rice, yard and houseplant trimmings and dairy products. The only things they ask you not to add, I'm just going to name a few of them because most of them are common sense, but things like hard bones like chicken bones and steak, oil and grease, soaps, diapers, pet waste, alcohol. For the most part, it's just common sense that you should not be putting these things into a composter, but they do outline it in the manual just in case you aren't sure of what you can and can't add. And when I had put these food scraps and they were sitting in my Lomi, it did not really have an odor with the closed lid, which was amazing. And sometimes I even forgot that I had food sitting in there because there really was no smell to this. And once you fill the bucket up to the line, you can add in a Lomi pod, and these little tablets, they help with microbial growth, keeping odor gone as it's running, and then you can go ahead and start the Lomi. There are 3 different modes that you can run it on, and I'm going to go over them right now. So first one is the Eco Express mode, which is what I use most often. It's a faster cycle, takes about 3 to 5 hours, and therefore it has a lower energy consumption. The second cycle is the Lomi approved mode, and this is designed for composting compostable commercial goods and packaging, so things like that plastic bag that the Lomi was wrapped in. And that one is a little bit longer. It takes about 5 to 8 hours. And then the third and final mode is grow mode. This runs at a lower heat to kind of preserve the microbiota in your food waste, and it takes the longest at about 16 to 20 hours to complete a cycle. Before I go on, I want to hit on energy consumption because I know a lot of people may hate on the Lomi for using too much energy. They feel like the sun does a better job, which the sun is great, it can do a better job. But for those of us who don't have a yard, the Lomi is a great option, and it honestly doesn't use that much energy. So let's just quickly see how much energy it is using with each of these cycles, because each cycle does use different amounts of energy. So the Lomi's wattage is 500 watts, which is lower than the typical microwave or hairdryer or coffee maker, and it's slightly higher than the average like radio or stereo system. So with the first two modes, the Eco Express mode and the Lomi approved mode, they use about 1.5 to 2.5 kilowatts, which is similar energy consumption to running one load of dishes for the average dishwasher. On the other hand, the grow mode, which I mentioned takes 16 to 20 hours, it uses about 16 to 20 kilowatts, which is rather high considering the average home uses about 30 kilowatts in a day. So if you're adding 16 to 20 onto that, it is pretty high. And that is only if you're using grow mode, which I rarely do. I'm most often using the Eco Express mode. It does a great job, and I really haven't had a need to switch to the grow mode, and therefore I have not been consuming that much energy. So it's up to the user on how much energy you want to consume. While running, the Lomi is a really quiet machine. It only registers about 60 decibels. It was kind of like a similar noise level to maybe a dishwasher, probably quieter than that. And I was extremely pregnant while running my first few cycles of the Lomi. I had a very sensitive nose, so I could kind of smell a weird odor while it ran, kind of like the smell of garbage, but it was really faint. My husband, who obviously was not pregnant, did not notice it at all, and as I ran later cycles, it didn't bug me even while I was still pregnant. And time again, it was so satisfying to see my food waste that normally just goes into my garbage can turn into this dried organic matter. And when needed, you can clean the bucket out. It's extremely easy, as you can see here. It did not take a whole lot of work to get it cleaned. So I haven't had too many issues in the last few months of using the Lomi. I did deal with a jam, or I should say my husband dealt with a jam. He was so kind and fixed it for me. And there was also that plastic bag that I mentioned at the beginning, not decomposing super well. But each time I did have a problem, Lomi's website was extremely helpful in troubleshooting, giving advice to deal with the problem. So if you ever do deal with a problem with your Lomi, just know that the Lomi website and customer support are extremely helpful and will walk you through how to solve the issue. So I've been storing my Lomi soil, for lack of a better word, in this plastic bin next to my Lomi. I plan to use it as an additive in my tiny little garden that I have. I've also used it as an additive to my houseplant soil, kind of to act as a fertilizer for them. And they recommend using a 10-to-1 ratio when adding it to soil. So not very much is needed. And like I said, I was doing this to kind of have a natural, slow-release fertilizer for my houseplants. And the one problem I did run into with this, and if you are planning to add it to your houseplant soil, if you have them, is that it did increase the chances of mold growing on the soil, which isn't necessarily a bad thing to have mold, since microbiota in soil is good for creating available nutrients for a plant. But most people don't really want to see mold growing on their soil. And if you have fungus gnats, they will thrive if you add the Lomi organic matter into the soil. So just use it wisely, use it sparingly. I don't imagine you'd have this sort of problem with fungus gnats or mold growing on your soil if you were adding it to an outdoor garden where it is exposed to the outdoor elements. All right, so all in all, what are my overall thoughts on the Lomi Home Composter? So I'm going to start with the biggest thing I loved and the biggest thing I did not love. So biggest thing that I loved is that it gave me the ability to compost in a small space. I'm renting, I don't have the liberty to have a large compost pile because it's my landlord's yard, and I don't really want one of those huge turnable bins taking up the little space that we do have. And frankly, a lot of people, I'm not one of them because I do love science and plants and things like that, but a lot of people simply have no interest in learning how to compost because it is really a learning process. There's a lot that goes into it and creating a workable compostable pile, things like that. So the Lomi offers a really great solution to quickly and easily compost food waste in small spaces for those of us that are living in apartments or renting or just don't have access to large outdoor spaces. Now, on the flip side, the biggest thing that I do not really love about the Lomi is that you do have to make recurring purchases, and this is for the activated carbon filters and for the Lomi pods. Those two things you have to keep getting to run the Lomi. The activated carbon in the filters needs to be changed about every 3 to 6 months depending how much you use the Lomi. And then the Lomi pods, they come in packs of 45 up to 360. Now they do offer subscribe and save programs, and when I looked it up, it costs about $80 every 3 months for a refill of activated carbon and Lomi pods, which isn't terrible, and I get that it's their business model, it's how they make money, but it just kind of stinks to have to keep spending money on the Lomi. It's just not my jam. But if I did have to give this product and my experience with it a rating out of 10, I honestly think I'd give it an 8 out of 10. The only reason why it lost points is due to having to deal with problems every now and then and the recurring payments. But overall, I would recommend the Lomi to anyone. They have really great customer service. It's super easy to use. It makes composting accessible and easy for everyone, no matter your experience level. And I think that it is on the right track to reducing food waste and making a positive environmental impact, and that it's worth the investment. So like I mentioned at the beginning, if you're interested in getting one or just learning more about it, I've included a link for you below in the description. And thank you so much for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe if you're interested in more content that revolves around the plant world and keeping plants and the environment happy. Thanks again for watching.